This ties in perfectly with the third, and I guess for the sake of this conversation, final question that I struggled with. I struggled with a lot of questions, but for now, we'll keep it to three. You brought up who makes it to the top and the personality that would make it to the top. You also spoke about Mao's vision and the callousness that he executed that vision with. Let's bring up the third big question that I struggled to answer, which is the culpability of Benjamin Netanyahu and the state of Israel. In German history, there is the Sonderweg theory, the special path, which implies that the rise of the Third Reich or Nazi Germany was a consequence of the path that Germany was on. It was an inevitability. And I know that you don't completely agree because you've argued in A Nation on Trial that the Germans didn't vote for Hitler because of his anti-Semitism. But there are historians like A.J.P. Taylor in The Origins of the Second World War, Fritz Fischer in Germany's Aims in the First World War, that have alluded that Hitler was an inevitable outcome of Germany's political instability, the Treaty of Versailles, economic hardship, and the failures of the Weimar Republic, making it more prone to authoritarianism and extreme nationalism. So Hitler was not a bug of the system, he was a feature of the system. And then if it was not him, then the German public would have elected someone else who had a similarly ruthless, aggressive, radical ideology like Hitler. Is Benjamin Netanyahu in a similar position? There are only two possible scenarios. One, he's a perfect representation of what the public wants, what the public sentiment is. And if you want to make it to the top in Israel and stay at the top, then you have to do what he's doing at the moment. There's an Israeli expression, Ein Brea, no choice. Then Benjamin Netanyahu is just a perfect reflection of that. Or the second scenario is that, no, he's not the right representation of the public sentiment. He's an anomaly, an outlier. He's a warmonger. He's power hungry. Similar to Hitler in the Third Reich, is Benjamin Netanyahu a puppet of statewide ideology, or is he a perpetrator of it?
These questions of that sort are so complicated, and I don't possess the mental capacity to work through those arguments.
I'm sure you do.
No, I do not. They've been pondered since probably when history was first being written, the extent to which if something happened, was it therefore inevitable? Yeah. Because if it didn't happen, if the alternative didn't happen, there must have been a reason why it didn't happen. Yeah. And therefore what happened is the ultimate product of what had to happen.
Yeah.
I don't ponder those questions anymore. There was a point in my life when I pondered them. I think what's correct to say is you always get into these questions about what's sometimes called the great man theory of history, whether a single individual played a significant role or he or she was just the product of historical circumstances, you put it. If Hitler wasn't there, another person would have been there. There's a book, I'm sure I have it somewhere, by the Russian Marxist named Plekhanov. Mm-hmm. And he has a chapter on the great man theory of history. And he basically takes, I guess it's probably right over here. And the chapter is called, let's see, Man and Necessity in History. Whether something is the product of necessity or it's the product of, I haven't read it in 100 years. In any event, and I'm not about to, A, because I don't have the capacity, and B, the mental capacity, and B, because I don't think in the course of an interview you can answer that question, understand the relationship between the role of individuals or even the role of masses of people versus the role of the objective factors So what was the French Revolution an example of the subjective agency of the French people? Or were those people mobilized by virtue of objective factors? And so the revolution was inevitable. There are many examples. I don't believe there would have been anywhere near the dimensions of the Nazi Holocaust were it not for Hitler, that he harbored this particular. The Nazis didn't like Jews. I'm not going to dismiss that, but the organized magnitude of the Nazi Holocaust was clearly a product of Hitler himself. No, I wouldn't go as far as to say, as sometimes said, no Hitler, no Nazi Holocaust, but I think the magnitude, it would have been quite different without a Hitler. Leon Trotsky, one of the Russian revolutionists, the leading figure after Lenin, he said, no Lenin, no Russian revolution. So there are people, even the most, people like Trotsky, who are the most Marxist in their interpretations, still see the role of individuals in changing the course of history. And then there are, of course, others like Plekhanov who say, no, if one person were, he said, if somebody had dropped a brick on Napoleon's head, there would have been somebody to take Napoleon's place. I'm pretty sure that was in Plekhanov. I remember the image. It's a famous image from his essay. What I would say, or I could say with a certain amount of certitude, is that Netanyahu is an accurate representative of Israeli society. It's not as if he is an excrescence. That's the fancy word for like an artificial outgrowth. He's not an excrescence. The fact that he is the longest sitting prime minister of Israel, there's a very good reason for it, because he is an obnoxious, self-righteous Jewish supremacist. And that is a reflection of 95% of Israeli society. Obnoxious Jewish supremacists, self-righteous society. So there, when I had one of these moments on the Piers Morgan program, and I said that about Netanyahu, Piers Morgan said, no, and all the other panelists said, no, he's very unpopular. Look at the polls. He's not going to win the next election. I think he will win the next election. I said it then, I say it now. The polls always say, he's going to, the pundits always, he's going to lose. I've been saying it since ages now. It doesn't happen. So that part I would agree with, that Netanyahu is less a orchestrator than he is a reflection of Israeli society. That part I think is correct. He is not this extraordinary agent, or I should say actor. He is a reflection of Israeli society. So I have a very difficult now for me to talk to any Israeli, because I think they're all complicit actively in the genocide in Gaza. Remember, Israel is a citizen army. Now, in general, a citizen army is correct. Everybody should have to bear the price of defending the country, which is to say, risking their lives. There shouldn't be a category of people who risk their lives to defend a country. In our country, it's mostly poor people. That's why they recruit in the army. They sign up for the army. Israel has, to its credit, a citizen army. But when you're committing a genocide, that means everybody bears the responsibility for it. It's representative of all of Israeli society. So I can't forgive that. It's very different than my super. My super is wholly unaware of the crimes committed and is by our country, and is certainly not enthusiastic, were he to know. They're enthusiastic. They relish. There's glee at the extermination of the people in Gaza. That's no exaggeration. There are so many compendia now of just collections of statements at every level of Israeli society. The music, the lyrics in the songs, "May Gaza burn." So I can't forgive that. That again, that would be a complete betrayal of all the values imparted. My parents, there was no way on God's earth, none, that they would forgive any of the perpetrators. Because remember what it means. You're not forgiving the perpetrators of what was done to you. You're forgiving the perpetrators who exterminated your family. Do you have that right to forgive those who threw your mother, your father, your brother, your sisters into a gas chamber? Do you have the right to forgive? No. Only the dead have the right to forgive, and they're no longer among us. So I think it's very presumptuous for the living to forgive the crimes that were committed against the dead. And I certainly would not go there. There are the low estimates, 18,000 children who have been killed so far in Gaza. Far be it for me to forgive the perpetrators. So I don't even think it's a relevant question to me. That's not for me to decide. Let the dead decide. And they're not among us to do so.